and gentlemen, my name's David Chadwick. I'm chair of the Eastern branch of the Guild. It's my great pleasure to welcome you today to the first webinar from Eastern branch. And today we're joined by Jay Webster of Anglian Water, who's going to tell us about the latest developments both nationally and regionally with the self-lay domains for adoption. So I think with say no more ado, I'll ask Jay to give his presentation. Over to you, Jay.
Excellent, thank you, David. Good afternoon, everyone. I think my screen will hopefully be appearing, or it will be there in front of you already. So we're going to talk around the self-lay codes for adoption and the kind of codes for adoption piece that come in for the kind of water main side of kind of the industry. What I'm going to move on to, and I'm hoping you can see my screen as I move through. There we go. So something we do at Anglian Water is a piece of contracting bit. It just helps set the scene really for kind of presentations, meetings, and just kind of anything in general really to help with that. So it sets out the 3 Ps: professional, practical, and psychological. So from a professional point of view today, I'm hopeful that you can kind of pick up and understand a little bit more around codes for adoption, as what it means as a kind of national piece, and then what Anglian Water have done to kind of meet that change in the kind of regulation. From a practical point of view, timing wise, I think we'll probably know more than about half an hour. So hopefully we'll keep it short and sweet for you guys. There'll be quite a bit of me talking, unfortunately. But yeah, there will be kind of bits to run through with you for that. Psychological, it is half term. I am on leave today from work, which has been really good from one side of things, in the fact that I haven't had other meetings to worry about, other work to worry about today, but the kids are at home. So yeah, any disruptions there, any interruptions, and I can hear them about to leave now. So hopefully it will be quiet and I can focus and give you guys kind of a good run through of what's what. So agenda piece. So I'm going to introduce who I am, give you a bit of an overview of who I am. Codes for adoption as an overview. So what actually that means as an industry change, and then kind of look at what it means for SLPs in the AW region. I'll also then touch on kind of how that and what that's changed with 2 of our systems, so Inflow and the introduction of Inflow Light. And again, there'll be opportunity then at the end for question and answers. So who am I? For those that may or may not be able to see me on the screen, there's a lovely mug shot of me there. I'm Julian Webster, or better known to everyone in AW as Jay Webster. I've included my new role on there, so I've moved back into a program manager role. But last year I was kind of offline effectively as our design manager. But within that, I was doing a large number of kind of project work in relation to both internal and the code project itself as a regulatory change. So as I said, I've been with AW for 14 years now, and that's predominantly been within development services, or developer services as it was previously known. I've kind of worked my way through kind of being a designer, through to an engineer, into a number of different management positions there. As I said, and last year very much as kind of being offline doing our project work. I'd say that I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, but my reputation kind of within that is very much as our kind of self-lay expert. So to all my colleagues and those in AW, I am kind of noted as our self-lay expert, which is ultimately why I picked up the project to run through the codes piece and the changes within AW for that. So codes for adoption. So kind of as an overview for codes for adoption, it is a regulatory change. So it's something that actually the water industry has brought in. It's not something the kind of water companies have decided to make themselves. It is a regulatory change. With that, there is a published water sector guidance for the changes and what needed to happen with that. So that gives the water companies and the SLPs and others the detail around what them changes meant. It sets out new procedures, so both as a national perspective, but also at a local level. It changes how water companies and SLPs will interact, and it really does develop on that standardisation of documentation. For those of you that have worked in the industry and understand the self-lay aspects, and it isn't made it perfect yet, but it is an improvement on it. It is very much, you have kind of one company does one thing, another company does another thing, another company does another thing, and it is very much around kind of standardising that approach and actually making that a lot easier for those kind of SLPs especially, and also the water companies to work kind of with you guys and work through that to kind of make that a seamless journey. And it also provides clear guidance and levels of service there as well. So effectively what it will do is give you very clear guidelines for the tasks and level of service, which significantly helps really from both a SLP and water company point of view as well. As I move on. So as a little bit of a timeline aspect, so kind of the Water Industry Act of 2014 required Ofwat to issue statutory codes for adoption. That resulted in Ofwat, Water UK and kind of a select group working together to pull together the water sector guidance for codes, which came into effect in November 2017. Kind of with COVID, with a few other things happening kind of in the regulatory world, that change was meant to come into effect in April 2020. But actually it got pushed back, and eventually in September, Ofwat confirmed that the water codes would go live for January 2021. So this year we have actually gone live now with the codes. The next point is quite an important piece, and I will touch on what these mean in a little bit more detail. But October 2020 was the deadline for the DCS and ACS to be published. As I said, I will go into them in more detail. And yeah, from January we've been live with codes. That's brought in quite a significant bit of change really for how we're going to work and kind of act around that. So as I know, it's significant changes. So what it's done is brought in some key documents that each water company will have published. The DCS, Design and Construction Specification, and the ACS, the Annual Contestability Summary. The Design and Construction Specification is effectively, and I will touch on that in more detail, but for me it's kind of that Bible effectively for working in that water company's area, setting out kind of their standards, their processes, their kind of bits. But what it also is very much a kind of national document as well, with areas for variation, but we'll touch on that. The Annual Contestability Summary is effectively your, what's the best way of putting it, your elements which are and aren't contestable. So those elements which an SLP can deliver and those elements which they can't deliver. What it's also done is brought in a new updated adoption agreement. So historically, the adoption agreements have been a national agreement, but have had a lot of areas of variation still between water companies. What the new adoption agreement has very much brought in, so it is a standard for the industry. So there isn't significant change in that document. It is very clear and set out to make that as easy for each SLP and each water company to publish, so they look the same in each kind of area around the country. As I touched on earlier, it has brought in new and revised levels of service. I've noted that a few times our level of service, it is a key part to kind of what the water companies provide. That level of service feeds into what the overall DMEX score is. And that, for those of you who don't know what DMEX is, developer measure experience, it's effectively Ofwat's way of kind of promoting and ensuring that each water company provides a great service to their customers at a developer level. So yeah, that's really important. 50% of that score is the LOS. So yeah, and it clearly sets out those contestable and non-contestable activities. So again, it does clearly conclude what they are, and it ensures that each company will also publish that on an annual basis. So I've touched on design and construction specification, but going into a bit more detail. So each water company will publish and update their DCS annually. Again, they can be updated more than annually, but there's a minimum expectation they will be updated annually. That document is to assist self-laid practitioners with the planning, design, construction, and commission of self-laid mains and also the service pipes. So as I touched on before, it's a template document effectively. So Water UK have pulled this document together. But what it does allow is each water company to update designated areas to detail their individual requirements. So as much as we, and they are, trying to kind of standardise that approach, there is still variations within each company, and there will be work done over the coming years to hopefully kind of minimise that, to make it an easier world for SLPs to work in with a more standardised approach. And it will be reviewed over time to reduce those variations and create a more standardised approach that I just touched on. So yeah, there's some real positives around that document and kind of what it brings. The annual contestability summary, as I touched on, so it does, again, same as the DCS, it will be published annually. Again, that will set out those activities that are contestable and non-contestable. It does it on a traffic light system. So those that are green are fully contestable, and will be delivered and can be delivered by the SLP should they have a relevant accreditation. Those that are amber are a contestable activity, but the SLP may need to demonstrate further requirements to deliver them. And the red is non-contestable. There is a bit around the red, and it's an odd one in the fact that should the water company want to kind of look at opening it up, then they could enable an SLP to deliver that. But at the minute, that is kind of a non-contestable bit, and I'm sure over the coming years that'll be developed more as kind of a national piece alongside the water companies developing that themselves. And what it does is sets a very clear requirement for contestable activities. So some of the previously noted non-contestable activities have now moved to a contestable activity, which has brought challenges both probably nationally, but for AW, and I will touch on them in more detail. So what does that mean for kind of the AW area and kind of our SLPs that we work with? So it brings efficiencies and effectiveness in our processes. So it means that those SLPs that work with AW get a better, more enhanced service from us. It's something that, you know, we've worked really hard on to kind of get to this stage, put in place kind of those documentation to actually enable the kind of ACS and the DCS to give as much information to our SLPs as possible to make that a much more streamlined process. As I noted on, it's also brought in some improved kind of levels of service, and that drives some of our efficiencies around actually how quickly we're doing some of these tasks. So again, touching on kind of reduced time and cost. So again, it kind of really brings out that piece of kind of what the SLPs can do. So although it has been a previously contestable activity, both as kind of a national, but also in the AW area, we've spent a lot of time and effort on looking at our vetting process. So effectively, as very much an historic piece, especially in the AW region, AW have predominantly done all designs, whether that be for self-lace, for our own work, and for kind of anything else. Over the last few years, we've opened up the piece around actually SLPs being able to do their own design. But that again has been quite open to variation, not just kind of within kind of the national area, but also within AW. We kind of have 3 different design offices, and again, you'll get different pieces of information back from those design officers based on their skills and experience. What we've done there is very much create a more robust system, actually, where it's a fixed number of questions that we're answering to give you really clear guidance back of how that works and looks. What it also does, it creates a great customer choice. So not just kind of codes and not just the SLPs. What it does do as well is kind of bring in the whole nav piece as well. So that's new and appointed variations. So that's where another water undertaker can take over an area, and they can provide water services and or sewerage services to that site as well. So it really does enhance that choice for the customer overall. Touched on it already, but it really does bring and enhance and improve service to the customer. It doesn't just improve it for the customer, it improves it for AWs. It sets out some really clear guidelines within that as well. And the other part for me is very key, and it's something I'm very passionate about with an AW, is it really does set out kind of an ability to have a continued development for this. It isn't kind of an introduction of a new process, new kind of bit, new regulation, and it's done and it's dusted and we've moved on. It's very much been designed to be continually developed, and I'm really passionate, and so those in AW, around actually keeping that development going. You know, really driving how we work with SLPs and becoming a leading water company for loan companies to work with, which I find really exciting. And a real opportunity for us in AW to really kind of benefit and maximise that. So the DCS and ACS, just touch on a bit more detail. So we've created a really robust DCS, as I mentioned earlier. Ensures all the necessary information is clear and concise. So again, we spent a lot of time working through that documentation. The areas which are open to kind of where we can put in our own variations, we've updated them but left it as clear and as concise as possible. Reference them in a different colour, so it's very clear to understand what is our requirements against the national requirements. What it's also been able to drive and do is actually refine some of our internal processes anyway. Some of our own bits have changed due to the introduction of the DCS, which has really helped both kind of at a local level, but also supporting our SLPs. Again, in relation to the kind of ACS and the Noncontestable summary, as I noted, some of the activities on there were previously non-contestable or could have been non-contestable. They had been in our area. So we've done a lot of work to open them up now to being a contestable activity. That includes the kind of meter installations and sampling. Those meter installation pieces are very kind of key and important. They are effectively the way we make the money. They are the bit that drives the bills and the bit that brings the money back into the water company. So ensuring that information is correct is key. And I will touch on what we've done around that to make that a much easier process for our SLPs. And again, enabling water quality sampling. It's something we as a business are very proud of. The water quality we have and kind of provide to our customers and kind of the recognition we've had nationally. So yeah, that is a key bit to us, and I will go into that in a bit more detail. So as I said, meter installations and sampling. We've created whole new processes for both of these. Procedures and workflows have been designed and built to facilitate these incontestable activity. So again, as I said, a lot of work has happened over that kind of last kind of 18 months really to drive the introduction of both of these. So what we did do and what we was able to do is enable the self-lay meter fit process to go live from last April. It's quite scary to think that it's over a year ago now. And what we've then done is enable the self-lay sampling from the 1st of January. So we've done a lot of work around both of them, the introductions of them and kind of the systems around it. So for the self-lay meter fit process, we'll go into more detail around our Inflow Light system on how we're doing work there and support with it. And the self-lay sampling process is very much tied into our sort of overall inflow system and actually what that looks like. And what it's also done with the sampling change in particular is brought in a lot of pieces around training and what that looks like for the SLPs and how we can ensure the SLPs have the relevant training to undertake them activities in the AW region in the same way that our own partner contractors have. So water quality technical training, we've been doing a lot of work over the last 6 months to review this, look at this. And again, like most things, due to COVID, it has been a significant challenge of kind of how that training can be delivered, what that looks like. So historically, these have all been kind of classroom-based training with AW or via a trainer-trainer, but ultimately that trainer-trainer has AW training initially. So again, just setting out there some of the kind of simple bits. EUSR card, I'm sure the majority of you will be aware of that. It's a national piece. Module 1 of POSWASH, module 2, 3, 4 are all AW processes pieces, so is in relation to POSWASH. And the final one, again, is part of POSWASH, but testing of Anglian Water mains. Again, as we kind of noted there, they have historically been kind of classroom-based training or trainer-trainer, which is a classroom-based training and also an annual reassessment as part of that. But we've done a lot of work over kind of the last 6 months of actually developing them programs to be delivered virtually. And over the last 2 weeks, we've started delivering some of them training pieces. So we've delivered some of our trainer. We've then some of our sampling pieces coming up. And within that, there is a one-to-one assessment piece to be done as well. So there's been a lot of good work to get to that stage and get that developed so it is ready. And the trainer bit is an excellent kind of piece in which we can train a member or members of the SLP organisation or external organisations, and they can then deliver that training internally to their own people. So it doesn't warrant the need to constantly come back to AW for that. It's one person can pick that up or a group of people can pick that up and deliver that. So I've mentioned our systems in a bit of detail, or we'll go into it in a bit of detail now, but I've mentioned them in a small piece. For those of you that have worked with Anglian Water before, will probably understand the top one. For those of you who probably are newer to AW or are kind of one of our SLPs that are still kind of getting used to some of the bits we've brought in, you've got Inflow. So that is our customer interface for all development related activities. So it's here to help and support all customers wishing to build or plan, build and develop new and existing properties. So again, it's our tool that effectively enables you to submit any applications. It's kind of the tool to liaise with our colleagues, the whole chat function there. You know, it's a great tool that is constantly developing as well. You know, we're doing a lot of work to continue development. It's not something we brought in, so it come in 2.5, 3 years ago now, and it's going to be constantly developed to make that a better system for kind of not only our SLP customers, but all our customers in relation to development and existing kind of new properties. Inflow Light is kind of a bit that's been brought in based on a lot of your comments, really. So we've done some engagement sessions over the course of 2019, I think it was, prior to we were going into lockdown, in which we liaised with a number of kind of customers, SLPs, developers, and something that come out of that and something that come out of some of our kind of internal kind of surveys has been kind of how we kind of pull information in. So effectively, that's been developed and built to support SLP site teams through the plot connection journey. So again, when I noted around the meter fit installation piece, that Inflow Light has been designed to really support and make that a much better thing. So our Inflow Improvements, and I don't expect you to be able to fully see what's on the side there, depending on your screen size, it may or may look very small. So again, we've made significant improvements in our Inflow system to facilitate codes and enhance that ability to transfer information from SLPs and Anglian Water. So the top picture there, that you may or may not be able to see much at all on there, is effectively a list of questions, which is our design vetting piece. Effectively, then you've got the comment sections in there, so whether it's compliant, and then comments from both an Anglian Water point of view and a customer point of view, so when the SLP then comes back and returns that information. So again, we've created kind of new workflows within that for those non-contestable activities. What we've also done is kind of listen to a lot of the feedback that's come in. So again, the system has been very rigid in the past, and again, it didn't particularly work brilliantly for multiple visits. It had some issues with that. So what we've done as well is able to just kind of redesign the whole mains construction piece. So when you're actually out on site delivering the actual mains, we've now updated the system to enable multiple visits and a much clearer kind of workflow process for that. So kind of notification, pre-site commencement meeting, deliver the main, test data, water mains connection, confirmation of connection, and then for those again that have worked in the industry and understand it, you then have vesting certificates issued. So that vesting certificate is key. It's effectively the piece that says AW now have taken on the ownership of this pipe, and it's now vested as AW. So again, we've done a lot of work with Inflow to make the system a lot smarter and a lot easier for our SLP customers to work with us. And also, as a part of that introduction, is to create better data as well. So both from an AW and SLP point of view, it's a lot clearer now. As I noted before, the self-lay vetting piece wasn't there previously. With that there now, it keeps a record on the system clearly of who said what and when, and kind of what changes have been requested, if any. So it does really enhance that piece there. Inflow Light. So yeah, Inflow Light, as I know, it is kind of a simplified way of providing information to AW via a mobile phone application for SLP on-site teams. It's a very simple system that effectively gives you a token for your phone. You can load into Inflow Light. The plots are all there, so anything you kind of already selected via Inflow will be ready on the phone. So the teams on site can very quickly and easily fill this in as a live piece. And it is very, very simple and straightforward, and submit that straight back into AW and update our corporate systems. So it also ensures and avoids kind of any issues around the piece of kind of data transfer, that information coming in. So again, historically, it's been a very paper-heavy exercise. And again, for those of you that have been involved in that, you would have a kind of 4 different bits of paper to fill in, an SL3, an SL4, an SL5, and potentially an SL6 as well. And what it's done is remove those 4 bits of paper, put it into a mobile phone app that makes life a lot easier. Kind of the pictures, depending on how big your screens are and what you're looking at, it's very simple. It very much gives you kind of a clear view. It also gives you kind of a geolocation as well. So you'll see the map location there. You'll be able to upload any photos you've had with that. You know, and again, as I touched on the water quality piece there. So again, we are very keen on water quality. It's an essential part of our business. Alongside that, then you'll be able to confirm any kind of smell, taste, anything along them lines. And it's just a very much simplified piece of kind of system there that kind of enables a really smooth journey for that customer. So kind of they are some of the pieces we've done. So it kind of really has driven significant improvement within a national perspective, but also with an AW. And as I said, from my point of view, it's very much a continued development. It isn't a we've delivered it now and we're stopping. This is going to be continued to develop. So although my role has changed, we have a number of people kind of bringing in to continue this development and kind of work with that delivery of this kind of change regulatory and actually drive that forward to continue improving that process from an AW point of view, from an SLP customer point of view, and also our developers point of view. So again, ultimately, it gives them greater choice to enable them to really have kind of a understanding of what they can do and what they can't do. So I'll flick on then to kind of my last slide in essence. It's to thank you all for your time, to kind of talk around the changes and how we've approached these to ensure lasting success. As I said, I'm a bit quicker than I thought. I think I'm 5 minutes quicker than I initially estimated. So kind of any questions, guys? So I think Dave will answer or ask me any questions that you guys have dropped in. One thing kind of I did touch on, and kind of a more than welcome to stay online as well after the question and answer if anyone wants to ask me anything directly. As I said, I'm off work today, so thankfully I have no meeting scheduled. So I'm not jumping from meeting to meeting today. All I've got to go and do after this is go meet the kids down at the park. So again, the more questions I get, the better for me. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Jay. Norman's actually going to handle all the questions, but beforehand, I've got one myself for you, actually. You mentioned about contestable and non-contestable activities. I wonder if you could give me an example of what's a non-contestable activity within the self-lay code.
So, Dave, it's a good question. So, effectively, non-contestable activities at the minute are still those kind of activities which mean you would be directly influencing the existing network, and more so than just a normal service connection. So a kind of a normal service connection up to kind of a 63 mil tapping can be done as a service connection and doesn't impact really our network significantly. Anything over that currently, so anything in the AW region in particular, anything above a 63 mil tapping on our network is deemed as a mains connection. And effectively what that means is that's currently a non-contestable activity, so we won't currently let or allow SLPs to make a mains connection to our network. So say anything greater than 63 mil is deemed as a mains connection. We won't allow that to happen yet. Alongside that, kind of as part of those non-contestable activities as well, kind of your PVC mains are deemed as kind of a higher risk than your standard kind of plastic or PE mains. Ductile iron, cast iron, AC mains again are not as such high risk. So again, any connection, whether it be a service connection or a mains connection to a PVC main, is still non-contestable as well. So it's elements along them lines which are non-contestable. Sort of designing, laying, service connections other than to PVC mains, water quality sampling, analysis of them samples, all that is now contestable. But it's just them elements which have a higher risk to impacting water quality still, significantly anyway, and impact on the network as well, that we still currently redeem ourselves. So again, if you're doing a cutting connection, let's say, onto the main network, if you're doing that cutting connection, it can have a significant impact to customers. And as we are all customers that have water supplies, your water going off is an essential piece. And yeah, we try and minimise that as well. So we really do try and drive that to kind of be a minimum.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much. So I guess that 63 millimeters and so on, those are normal connections that can be done under pressure without any effect on the remaining customers, aren't they?
Yes. So again, the majority of times they can be kind of top T connections effectively, and service tappings against your larger diameter connections. So again, you can do under pressure connections on larger size mains, but again, it does enhance the risk there, and it's something we currently haven't opened up fully to that contestable activity. But as I noted, it is something we're going to be developing on, so we will be opening it up eventually. But like most things over the last kind of 18 months, we've gone through a lot of work to facilitate the introduction of the meter fits, the meter installations, and also the sampling, and really to develop and enhance that vetting process. So we've spent a lot of time focusing on them to make that service as great as possible for our customers, and we will continue that work moving forward to kind of get to that stage for the mains connections as well. And again, kind of PVC connections, again, at the minute, it's a national kind of piece where they are non-contestable. Again, it is in our right and our ability to go, actually, we're happy letting SLPs do that as a company, but equally that will take time, discussions internally, developing that process, what that looks like, how we manage and mitigate that risk. So yeah, there's some really good bits there.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks very much, Jay. At this stage, I'll ask Norman to take over and feed any other questions that we've got through.
Okay, and good morning, everyone, and thank you, Jay, for a really interesting presentation. There are a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll start those off. If anybody does have a question, then please place it in the chat, and we'll. I'm sure Jay will be happy to answer them as we go forward. The first question comes from Joe Parker, and she's asking, the Lloyd's WERS scheme requires those involved in installing mains and services to hold a variety of accreditations and qualifications. Your training requirements appear to be separate and additional from this. Does this mean that you do not consider the WERS scheme fit for purpose?
No. So again, as part of the discussions we've been having recently, has been around the WERS piece. So WERS, very much we do rely on that as very much part of the requirements to AW is for those companies to be WERS accredited. The kind of bits around kind of the water quality section are being driven and developed more. So kind of as a national piece, there is discussion around kind of how that water quality piece can come in as a formal WERS accreditation itself. So the piece around water quality sampling and the bits there. So our POSWAS process is all about water quality hygiene. So effectively, that there is very much the focus of the training. It's not to kind of go against what the WERS accreditation is. It is very much around kind of the development and understanding of Anglian Water's processes in relation to water quality. It is still one of the areas which is kind of heavily still mixed between different water companies, in which some water companies that will very much view water quality, they all view it in a very high way, but we have our own kind of separate standards with that, and the POSWAS just ensures they kind of meet them standards, and that is exactly the same kind of training as what our partners go for as well. So kind of our partner contractors we have go through the exact same training around POSWAS to ensure that they are compliant in relation to that element of it. So definitely kind of we fully agree and fully sign up to the WERS piece. And again, any water company or any SLP looking to work in our area needs to have the WERS accreditation. But alongside that, we also deliver the kind of training around the POSWAS pieces and water quality, just to ensure that kind of that is compliant with how our partners do things, and also how it's a requirement as per our processes currently.
Okay, thanks, Jay. The next question comes from Sarah, and she asks, are there any changes planned to the arrangements for laying pipes in third-party land?
So in relation to kind of third-party land, the arrangements haven't distinctly changed from really where they were kind of previously. We'll touch on kind of where that was previously and where we are now. So kind of historically, an SLP has even been able to kind of undertake that interaction themselves and acquire that kind of access to third-party land, or they have also had the ability to, and again, this is the water company's discretion, to ask the water company to enact their powers to go and support that. And very much as part of that kind of adoption agreement update that I noted, that has kind of formalised that in that agreement in a bit more detail. So kind of just touch on two bits I mentioned there, very much so it sets out that it is the SLP kind of piece for them to go and interact that conversation with kind of locals and to access third-party land. However, if they are struggling with that or they want support with that, they can request that from the water company. And as I said, as a water company, we can choose to use our statutory powers to assist with that kind of interaction with third parties and enact our statutory powers. Like most things, clearly any costs associated with that will go kind of be fed back into any kind of monetary change there. So it's very much part of the adoption agreement, part of the work. And again, as I sort of said, it is open for the water company to say no, they don't want to get involved in that. But equally, they're more than welcome to be involved in that process. It should you, as an SLP, require that, and should the water company then be wanting to assist with that piece there.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Our next question comes from Rob, and his comment is, perhaps outside the remit of this talk, Jay, as a land agent acting for water companies, developers sometimes go for self-lay across private land, and then once payment negotiations fail with landowners/residents, revert to requesting an S30 statutory requisition via the water company, who then has to deal with aggravated claimants. Is this an avoidable issue? Sometimes that resonates with anyone. Is this is this an avoidable issue? Something that resonates with somebody on this call or worthy of another Teams talk?
Rob, it's good to see you and speak to you. It's been a long time. So from kind of that point of view, it does briefly touch on kind of what I touched on before. And it's kind of it's a good question, and I probably haven't got a full answer for it now. But yeah, it is one that can create problems. And again, it is that piece around kind of that bit for the water company to kind of be a part of that. So where they do choose to enact any powers, otherwise, effectively, the water company will stay out of that kind of piece and leave them discussion to be between the SLP and the land agent. I'm trying to think of a full answer for you, Rob, that kind of is something I could probably give now without looking into it in a bit more detail. I think what we'll do, Rob, is probably touch on that one in a bit more detail, and I'll ask a couple of others in AW around kind of what their thoughts are on that as well.
Okay. So then there's a couple more questions, Jay. So the first one is, hi Jay, are you involved with sharing best practice and lessons learned with other water companies, e.g. Scottish Water, who allow UCPs to carry out water mains tie-ins above 63 mil currently?
No, is probably my honest answer. And again, it's something kind of that I'm really keen to kind of develop, really. So, you know, as water companies, we are a challenging bunch. And yeah, don't always talk as much as we probably should. And again, that is changing kind of how that often we talk and what that looks like. And again, as I say, there are some really positive bits around kind of WERS and the Lloyd's piece, but equally, not all areas. I can't remember whether Scotland falls into that WERS piece or not, actually. But yeah, there is an opportunity for different people to enact things differently. So yeah, it's quite an open one really as to what they can and can't do. But from a kind of my point of view, yeah, the more we can liaise with other water companies, the more support we can kind of put in there in relation to kind of that will be really beneficial. And really help that development, both from kind of an AW point of view, the other water company's point of view, but ultimately kind of all our customers' point of view as well in relation to SLPs. The more we can work kind of together, and again, it's part of kind of what's going to be driven from code is that kind of standardized piece and that alignment there, and it not being kind of, you know, the old water authority. Effectively, we are, you know, very much being driven to improve our service, and I noted DMEX earlier. So all these bits there are really trying to help that. So kind of touching back to the question a little bit, Norman, it was around kind of the Scottish side allowing connections greater than 63 mil.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So again, as part of kind of what the contestability table does bring is the ability for each water company to kind of allow different things in their areas currently. So I said those elements in green have to be contestable. There's an element in amber, which I said are currently open to potential for whether they be contestable or non-contestable, and then those in red which aren't contestable. So as part of that, those amber pieces currently do include the ability for the water company to say, actually, we want to allow it to be contestable, and that currently can be up to anything up to a 12-inch connection. So you could do a 280 mil connection onto a 355 main quite comfortably. It all depends what that water company will allow currently. So we don't allow that currently. I'm pretty confident the Thames do allow bits like that. Scottish Water may, other water companies may. But at the minute, from an AW point of view, we've still got a lot of work to do to get to that stage to enable that as a contestable activity. But others may already have that as a contestable activity.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Just finally on that, the Scott McRae who asked that question just said that, just for your information, I guess
they are
Scotland fall under WERS. So yeah. Our next question comes from Nick Preston, and he says, "Hi Jay, many thanks for your insight. How do you see the DCS being aligned to sewers for adoption?
So again, in the polite sense, Nick, I'll be honest, the sewer side I haven't been too heavily involved in. We've had our kind of partners that are kind of alongside that, delivering the sewer side. So I don't know if you know kind of anyone in AW, but Gary Boddington, Steve Webb and Neil Padwick have done a lot of the work around that. So the DCS for the water side very much sets out kind of the water aspects of that planning, delivery and design. So for the wastewater side, I'll be honest with you, Nick, I'm not fully sure, but I'm more than happy to speak to kind of my counterparts and get a kind of more detailed answer to that and kind of understand in a bit more detail for you as well. So I don't know fully, as I said, thankfully, it wasn't something I was heavily involved in. The water side was a big enough change anyway. So yeah, I can look into that, or I can put you in contact with those to give you a bit more information on that. Okay,
thanks. I think we've just a couple more. The next question comes from Nick Anderson, who says, "Great presentation, thank you. In your experience, what is the quality of assets laid by SLPs compared to the in-house delivery routes? What has worked well in managing SLP's performance and ensuring quality standards are met?"
So from kind of asset point of view, we've seen kind of no difference between kind of our partner delivery and our SLP delivery. So again, standards are good. We kind of keep track of that. So we do regular audits with our SLPs. Again, that will be developed, and it's something we're looking at now to kind of further that development and ensuring they are happening, and equally doing the same with our partners as well. So again, we are looking at kind of that assurance piece and that auditing piece in more detail at the minute, really to make that a bit more robust. So from both a kind of partner, so AW partner point of view, delivering the work, SLP point of view, and also kind of the bits with relation to NAVs and how that kind of fits in there. We're looking at that quality assurance bit as a whole. So I'm looking at developing that in a bit more detail of how that can work and really putting in place a very much clear audit program for how that will work moving forward. Again, from my point of view and from my experience, and again, some of the SLPs I know might disagree, but I feel that Anglian Water have actually built up some really good relationship with the SLPs as well. You know, our engineers are actually out there on a day-to-day basis. I've got some really good relationship with these SLPs. A lot of them as well that are working for these the SLPs themselves have either worked for AW before or worked for other water companies as well. So they equally have a lot of experience in the industry. And you know, from a standards and quality point of view, as I said, we don't see any issues that we don't kind of see with our own partners even anyway. So yeah, there is no kind of real discrepancy there. And again, it's kind of that regular audit piece. So over the kind of course of this year, we will be developing that and kind of sharing information out there with our kind of SLPs and our partners as well, just to kind of cover that to show that, you know, we are being fair and equitable with what that looks like as well. You know, we're really keen to ensure that we develop the standards, both from an internal point of view and external point of view, and you know that we are very clear what that looks like as well, which is why the training is being given around the kind of trainer and that training piece as well, to make sure we are clear and equitable with both kind of actions with our partners and also the SLPs we work with for the delivery.
I just wondered if you could develop your Flow Light sort of software to mobile phones to provide, you know, some sort of integrity there in terms of photographs and reporting when the job's done, because that would lift the standards, I'm sure, pretty well.
Yes, yeah. So there is kind of, as I say, there's the Inflow Light piece. There's a number of other kind of bits that are in the business which can enable that as well and really support that. So there's a system out there we've got called M2I, and it is very good around that kind of piece there. So again, we will be looking at that over the course of the year. It's a very simple tool. You know, it's kind of already developed to do some of that for kind of our larger alliances. And so we're looking at bringing into kind of our development services IMDS alliance piece to really start driving some of them standards and creating clear data with it as well. You know, from our point of view, it's very much around treating kind of everyone fairly. So, you know, we don't sit there and kind of have it so it feels like we are, against SLPs. We're very much for SLPs in our region. We need them in our region. We don't have enough direct labour to deliver all the work, so it's a key to AW and our success.
Yeah.
So it's essential that we work with you. So again, kind of them audits are not there to kind of make things worse for yourselves. It's just to bring it in line with how both sides working, whether it be an internal partner piece or the SLP piece, to make sure we are aligned in our approach to both.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Jay. And our just as there are no other questions, but Rob York has made a comment. He was the gentleman who asked the question about disputes on private land, and he's offered to provide a talk on that for us. That's perhaps something that Dave, as chair of the Eastern Branch, could pick up on, or I'll talk to my team at HQ and make contact with Rob and move that on.
Norman, thanks. That's excellent news. I'd certainly like to take it up from Eastern Branch, and remember many interesting and detailed discussions with Rob during my time at Anglian Water.
Yeah. Okay. As
have I, Dave. So yeah, Rob's a good old boy. So yeah.
There we are. That's excellent.
Okay, I'm feeling I think we're coming towards the end of the formal proceedings, Norman. Unless you've got
that's right. I'd just like to remind everybody that we have got an exciting program of webinars going forward over the next 2 or 3 months. If you want to see our program, then go to pipeguild.com. On the events tab, there's a full list there. The next one is on the 15th of April, and it's building the biggest Thames Tideway tunnel, and we've got Colin Murphy, who's the engineering manager of Tideway, giving us a talk on that very important project. So I'm sure that might well interest a number of you. It's still not too late to put your entries in for the Pipeline Industry Guild Awards, and also for those of you who are joining us from Scotland, there's also time for the PDNs to put their entries in for the Karen Trophy competition. So again, details of that are on our website. So I personally would like to thank Jay for giving us the time on his day's holiday and providing us with a really interesting and thought-provoking presentation. And I'll just pass you back to Dave now to formally close the webinar. So over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Norman, and I'd like to reinforce your thanks to Jay there. Thank you, Jay, for a really interesting presentation there. I can remember from my days at Anglian, when some stages I was dealing with sewers for adoption, and it's very interesting to see the parallels, but also the very important differences in dealing between the potable water and the wastewater functions, and some very important quality aspects that you've had to bring in to that. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry?
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me, Dave. It's been really good.
Yeah. Thanks very much to Norman and Kate and Catherine for their help from headquarters. Just like a couple of plugs I'd like to give to reinforce what Norman was saying earlier on. 27th of April is the next Eastern Branch webinar, where we'll have the Welding Institute will be talking to us about pipe welding certification scheme. So that ties very much in with the sort of quality and aspects that we've been hearing about today, and sure there'll be some aspects linking back to what you were saying just a few minutes ago, Norman, about photographs and so on.
Yeah,
so that's the 27th of April. And then, as with everyone, I'm very pleased to give it's another plug for the National Dinner, the Guild National Dinner, next year, 8th of March 2022, when we've got a lot to celebrate, a lot to do, and two dinners rolled into one, I think, for most of us. But so a big plug for that. I think this is the end of the formal presentation. I think if we've still got some time, Catherine and Kate, then Jay's agreed to stay on online for a chat with everyone who wants to have a sort of a chat about these outside the meeting. But this is the end of the formal. Thank you very much for everyone. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, headquarters ladies, and goodbye. Thank you.
Okay. Cheers.
So.